Well, last week in our time together, as we were looking at the resurrection of Christ, specifically, we were looking at Jesus on the cross. And we were looking particularly at the two thieves and the response that transpired there over the 6 hours as Christ hung on the cross. We also had looked at the centurion and his response, that hardened Roman leader of 100 men. And this morning, we're taking a look at two of Christ's disciples. But they're disciples that aren't mentioned in the 12. And we all need to always keep in mind that there were literally dozens and dozens and dozens of disciples, both men and women, that followed Jesus for that 3 years as he ministered in Israel. We only usually get just the 12, okay? But this morning, we're going to be introduced to another disciple, not of the 12, and the other disciple is going to remain nameless. And as we come to this passage, it's found in Luke 24. I want you to understand that the other gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and John, don't record this at all. And so Luke includes this as he's revealing and emphasizing the humanity of Christ, his humanness, his pain, his emotions, his intimacy. And so Luke, as a medical doctor, is going to reveal some very interesting things. And this passage that we're looking at is not an exception. The Spirit of God leads Luke in what he writes here about these two disciples after the resurrection of Christ. Because Luke is so fascinated with the human body as a medical doctor. And he's going to reveal some things to you and me that we will not find, like I said, anywhere else except this passage. Literally, as we look at the word here this morning, I was saying to the Lord, what do you want to emphasize in this passage? Because I could literally preach a dozen sermons without even, and all of them would be extremely different, without even blinking an eye. Because there's so much spiritually going on in this passage. So you know who we're talking about. You know what I'm talking about. You know the disciples that I'm talking about. Is that enough to give you an inclination? Especially when you go to Luke 24. When you get there, you come to this incredible story. You got to understand what has transpired. You got to enter into the text, as I always encourage you. Don't divorce yourself of what's going on. Don't divorce yourself emotionally, intellectually, as to what's going on in the passage. Or you'll miss it. And you'll have a hard heart by just having an intellectual understanding of what's going on. But allow God to minister to you as you enter in to the emotions and the pain of the individuals that you're reading about. The Messianic hopes were running extremely high. The followers of Christ thought that this was the time at the Passover that he was going to reveal himself as the Messiah. He's certainly the Messiah, and they knew it with all the miracles that he was performing, raising the dead and healing the blind, and we could go on with a whole list of them. And they were so excited, and remember on Palm Sunday, just a week earlier, man, the disciples were shouting, "Hosanna, Hosanna. Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," and the attributes of Yahweh, because he is Yahweh. And so excitement filled the air. And when the Passover finally arrived, and they saw their hopes dashed, whom they were certain was the Messiah, whom they were certain was the one who was going to overthrow the Romans. And they saw him hanging on a cross, suffering unbelievably, and dying. But as we talked about last week, don't you dare forget, Jesus was in total control of his suffering and of his death. No one, when they're dying in crucifixion and reach the point of death, have strength to shout, "It is finished. And Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." He was in complete control of it all. But the disciples, tremendous heartache, tremendous confusion, tremendous fear. They were afraid that they were next, and crucifixion was not a nice thing to experience. And it was a daily reality with the Romans in control. Anybody rebelling against Rome, you'd be hanging on a cross. And so the disciples would end up in that upper room with the doors locked, bolted shut, spies watching them looking for the authorities coming. I'm sure they had a plan of escape to get out of that upper room somehow, some way. And they were certain that their demise was coming too. They were just at a loss. Broken. They couldn't put things together, even though Jesus had been telling him that he was going to die and that he was going to rise on the third day. It just didn't enter them. And so they are scared to death, but we know on that resurrection day early in the morning, who are the brave ones? Yeah, the women, yeah. Not the guys. What a bunch of sissies, right? The women. Amazing.
We always have to get it done.
These women, wow. So filled with gratitude to Jesus, changing their life. Mary Magdalene, whom 7 demons were cast out of, will be the first to see Jesus resurrected. He will manifest himself to her first. And you need to ask yourself, why would he do that? In their culture, it was a man ran culture. This is a real slap in the face to the men. That the Messiah would first appear to Mary Magdalene and then other women before he'd appear to any of the disciples. one good verse to take and hide in your heart and in your mind is that God doesn't despise a broken and a contrite heart. Matter of fact, God delights in a broken, and I mean broken heart. You and I go, what? Yeah. Yes, he does. But in your brokenness, don't turn away from the Lord. Turn to the Lord. So many push the Lord away in their brokenness. That's the worst thing they could do. And the Lord says, I'm not going to despise a broken heart where you are crushed. I will come and I will minister to you in an unbelievable way in that brokenness. You know what's the worst thing is? That's the last thing we want in our lives. You don't want to know how the church grows and how more people come to faith in Christ? It's through the church being persecuted and through the believers suffering. That's when the church grows. And it grows unbelievably. It's a principle that we see all through the Scriptures. Yeah. Be honest. It's the last thing we want, though, in our lives, right? But as we come to the passage that we're looking at this morning, we're going to see two guys cracked up. Matter of fact, we're going to see two guys late in the day of that resurrection day, even though, listen to this, even though the women came and reported to them that his body was missing and that angels had appeared to them and that he had risen from the dead, and then another woman comes in and says, I've seen Jesus, he's alive, and you're nuts, you're out of your mind, they say to her. But then Jesus, sometime during that day, appears to Peter, whacks Peter in the head, I'm alive. But it's later on in the day, as the sun's beginning to get lower in the sky, that two of these disciples say, you know what, it's been 3 days and we're out of here. We're getting out of Jerusalem. This is a bad place to be. And so they start on a trek to go to the town of Emmaus, 7 miles away, and this is what we read. Behold, two of them, disciples, they were going that very day to a village named Emmaus, which was about 7 miles from Jerusalem. Why would Luke mention the name of the village? And why is it called Emmaus? And they were talking with each other about all these things which had taken place. And while they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself approached and began traveling with them. But their eyes were prevented from recognizing him. And he said to them, what are these words that you're exchanging with one another as you're walking? And they stopped and they stood still, and they were looking sad. And one of them, named Cleopas, answered and said to him, what's wrong with you? Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem and unaware of the things which have happened here in these days? And then Jesus said to them, what things? And they said to him, the things about Jesus the Nazarene, who was a prophet mighty in deed and word and in the sight of God and all the people, and how the chief priests and our rulers delivered him to the sentence of death, and they crucified him. But we were so hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. And besides all this, it's the third day since these things happened. But also some women among us amazed us. They were at the tomb early in the morning, and they didn't find his body. And they came saying that they had also seen a vision of angels who said that he was alive. And then some of those who were with us went to the tomb and found it just exactly as the women also had said. But him they did not see. And Jesus said to them, "Oh, foolish men, and slow of heart, dull of heart, to believe in all that the prophets have spoken? Was it not necessary for the Christ to suffer these things and to enter into his glory?" And then beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them the things concerning himself in all the scriptures. And they approached the village to where they were going. And he acted as though he was going to go further along. But they urged him, saying, "Hey, stay with us, will you? For it's getting towards evening, and the day's now nearly over." And so Jesus went in to stay with them. And when he had reclined at the table with them, he took the bread and he blessed it, and breaking it, he began giving it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. And they said to one another, "Oh man, weren't our hearts burning within us while he was speaking to us on the road and while he was explaining the scriptures to us?" And they got up that very hour and they returned to Jerusalem in the dark, and they found gathered together the 11 and those who were with them. And they kept saying, "The Lord has really risen and has appeared to Simon. Simon wasn't lying to us." And they began to relate their experience on the road and how he was recognized by them in the breaking of the bread. Now, while they were telling these things, Jesus himself stood in their midst and said to them, "Peace be to you." These two disciples, we only get the name of one, Cleopas. But they're out of there. They've left the upper room, and they're on their way to Emmaus. Probably, we're not exactly certain where Emmaus is, so there's some skepticism here, but it is only a short distance from Jerusalem, 7 miles. Keep in mind, this is the first day of the week, Sunday, Resurrection Day. And they're headed out, probably headed back up north to Galilee from where they were from. And it's kind of interesting what transpires here as they're walking along this road to the north. Dusty, dirty roads. Keep this all in mind, that these pathways, this is how everybody got along, okay? They traveled along these paths, and most of them walked. Every now and then there was donkeys or horses or what have you that individuals were riding on. But these are the roadways. And you would be passing people all the time, and so on and so forth. Anybody watch The Chosen at all? Okay, good. And if you watch some of that, it gives you a good idea of what it was like in those days, and with the pathways, and with a lot of people going in different directions. And so as these two disciples are walking along, and they're discussing everything that transpired. They just can't put two and two together. But they're talking about the Lord. And notice what happens. In this discussing their debating and they're trying to make sense of everything. But notice what happens. Jesus appears, most likely from behind them. And I'm going to say he manifests himself. Because he's been right there with them all along. And so he comes up to them and he's listening to them talking. And they see him, and they're talking away. And Jesus says, what are these words you're exchanging with one another as you're walking along? And so these two disciples of his stop. Of course, they don't recognize who he is. Matter of fact, Jesus supernaturally prevents them from seeing him and understanding it's him. Happened to Mary Magdalene. She was at the tomb. She turned around, thought it was the gardener. She didn't recognize him. It's going to be interesting that even when Jesus takes and shows himself to all the disciples that are in that upper room, there are some that don't believe. They don't recognize him. You go, what? Spiritually, I wonder what's going on. Their eyes were prevented. It says there in the text. Picture this. There's Jesus, and they finally stop and look at what they say to him when he says, what are these words what are you guys talking about? What are you discussing? Look what they say. Cleopas, what's wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem and unaware of the things which have happened here in these days? And guess what? He's the very one it's all about. Okay? Jesus more than knows everything. He is the thing, right? He's the center of the entire topic, and he knows it all. And look what he does to him. What are you talking about? Why would he do that? Why would the Creator, knowing exactly what they were talking about, knowing that they were talking about him, why would he ask them the question, what are you guys talking about? He does have a sense of humor, okay? And there's no question about that. He's like, okay, you want to be a little sarcastic, saying, what's wrong with you, buddy? Everybody in Jerusalem knows what's going on. So Jesus goes, okay, let's have a little fun here. What are you guys talking about? But at the same time, this is just like our marvelous Creator. You want to know why? Do you know what our Creator wants from you and from me more than anything? Even though He already knows it all, He knows it better than you, He wants you to talk to Him. That's the whole reason He created you and me. It's so that we could have fellowship with Him. And we see it right here in the text where he decides, okay, listen, I love it when you guys talk to me. He says, what things? What's been going on? And he allows these two disciples to talk to him. And you know what? He loves it. even though he knows it much better than what they're saying. He wasn't doing it to test them, to say, oh, let me see how much they really know about me and me hanging on the cross or whatever, or about my resurrection. No, that's not the issue. The issue is he wanted them to interact with himself. Why do you think he had the disciples all around him wherever he went? Sleeping and eating and everything else. It's because he wanted them to experience him. He wanted to experience them at the same time. It's the whole reason he created you and me, to have fellowship with himself. And so he pulls this out of them. And it's kind of interesting what we see in the text here is, where are you at? They stood still looking sad. Now wait a minute. Didn't they just hear a few hours earlier? Didn't they hear the women saying that he's alive? Didn't they hear the women saying that they saw angels? Now wait a minute, let's back up a little bit. Do you know what happened that morning? To blow them away, God took the first fruits and brought them out of the tombs. The dead saints were walking around in the city of Jerusalem because there was a bodily resurrection of those saints' bodies. What? Hundreds that were dead are seen. Can you imagine the buzz that was going on in the city of Jerusalem, with the city being packed with all the pilgrims from the Passover? And it was the day of first fruits. The first fruits of the resurrection. Remember, they'd waved the barley before the priest, just the handful stock, couple stalks of barley that you would give to the priest, and he would wave it on first fruits, showing the resurrection of the few, in anticipation of the full resurrection coming in 50 days at Pentecost, at the wheat harvest. And there would be another waving by the priest. But do you remember what you gave the priest at Pentecost? What did you hand the priest at Pentecost 50 days later? It wasn't certainly a stalk of barley with a few barley stalks in it. What was it? Say it again. How much bread? And it was a full loaf of bread. 2 full loaves. You'd hand them to the priest. That's a wave offering, picturing the resurrection. The full and complete resurrection coming in 50 days. Oh, lots to be said there, but we don't have time this morning. And so these guys, the whole city is abuzz. Dead people, alive. You can't miss that. Now, do you think there was any chatter that the veil of the temple on Friday, when he was crucified, was ripped right from the top to the bottom and they could look right into the Holy of Holies? Do you think the earthquake that shook the whole city and opened up tombs all over the place, don't you think it was enough to stir these guys? And then with the report that the women had seen angels, and then they had seen Christ and he was alive. Do they believe it? They're standing there looking sad. They are depressed. Why? So much to say. Well, he was a Nazarene, they say, a prophet that was mighty in deed and word and spirit. The prophet, according to Deuteronomy, that Moses said that would come in the future. But the chief priests, they crucified him. Look at verse 21. I got to watch my time. I'm just watching it tick away. They say, we were hoping that it was he who was going to redeem Israel. We were hoping that he was going to set Israel free from the Roman occupation. There's a play going on here. Because he really did redeem Israel, didn't he? Spiritually. But not physically. We were hoping he was going to redeem Israel. And he's dead. Things didn't turn out the way we planned it. All our friends, or my friends, are calling me a fool. Know that song? Remember that one, Carl? Carl's shaking his head, yeah. Do you remember that one, John? No. He's going, no. Mark, you did a lousy job at singing it. Want to know why they're sad? Because God didn't do what they wanted him to do. The Messiah didn't do what they wanted the Messiah to do. They wanted to rule their own little kingdom of their life. And so since things didn't turn out the way they wanted it to, they said, I'm not believing in God anymore. I don't believe it. I don't care what people say, that they've seen him and that, angels and all that baloney. I'm not believing it. I'm totally disappointed because I had in my mind the way my life was going to turn out, the way I wanted my life to turn out. Oh, really? You ever been disappointed with God? Uh-huh. Because things didn't turn out the way you wanted it to go, right? And God had a complete different plan. I'm telling you right now, if I was planning my life, I certainly wouldn't have planned that zip line accident that I went through. Me and my stupidity. I certainly wouldn't have planned my cancer that I've gone through either. And I certainly wouldn't have planned what my oldest daughter and son-in-law went through in Wyoming and what I experienced in that process. There'd have been a lot of things I'd change. Do you want to know the whole reason these guys are sad is because Jesus didn't do what they wanted Jesus to do. You know what's really freeing in your life and in my life is when we don't put any demands on Jesus or God. And we go, Lord, I'm a living sacrifice. You can do with my life whatever you wish, whatever you desire. Whoa. You're not in control of your life anyway. You aren't going to control what happens today, Stephen. I'm sorry. I don't care how hard you try. You aren't going to control it. And so what is so freeing is when you let God be God and you just become his follower. Lord, I'm going to attempt this or attempt that, but whatever happens, I'm fine with it. Okay, was I disappointed a little bit? Yes, and it was because I put too high expectations on the Lord and I should have never done that. Beth and I went to a concert with Laura's Story. What if your blessings come through raindrops? What if your healing comes through tears? Is that right? What if 1,000 sleepless nights are what it takes to know you're near? We went to listen to her. I had pretty high expectations of ministering to the people sitting at the table where we were sitting. It was a dinner up at Bath, New York with Family Life. 600 people there probably in that concert. So it was a dinner and then her singing. And we had a 10-year-old that was completely out of control through the entire concert, stomping right back in front of Beth and I and talking and stomping, and unbelievable distraction. The entire concert. The only person in the entire auditorium, and she had to be right in front of Beth and I. The only distracting one in the entire auditorium. And you know, and it was just like, and I just, Lord, just help me to try to block out the noise, to block her out, even though she's blocking my view of Laura's Story singing. Help me to worship you. Did it turn out the way I planned it? Absolutely, positively not. Did I let it wreck my night? Praise God, no, I didn't. But it was with his help. And so there's going to be a lot of things in your life and my life that won't go the way that we want it to go. And the question is, are you going to let God be God? And are you going to see his hand in all of it? Now, there's a reason Jesus came along these two guys and started walking with these two guys. You want to know what the reason is? Why didn't he appear to any of the other disciples? Why didn't he go to John? My goodness, John was the one that laid his head on Jesus' chest, right? You couldn't get any closer than what John, beyond a shadow of a doubt, was the one that was most intimate with Jesus through the 3 years of ministry. Why didn't he go to John? Andrew? James? Why did he come to these two guys on the road to Emmaus? Why did he decide to manifest himself to them? They're sad. They're broken. But these guys are broken and they're discussing Jesus and what happened. And they're saying to Yahweh, Yahweh, we can't make heads or tails out of this. We can't figure out what in the world. And so Yahweh says, I'm going to show you right from the scriptures so that you can make heads and tails out of it. And Jesus says to you and me that if we draw near to him, he will do what? He's going to draw near to us. He's going to come right to us and he's going to minister to us. His intimacy with you and me is absolutely astounding. Before we went to the concert on Friday night, we stayed at a micro hotel there in Bath. And when we walked in, and Beth was getting everything set up with the girl behind the desk, Lord, as he often does, okay, Mark, Beth's got it all set up. Now you step in and start the spiritual conversation. I said, okay, here we go. I spent a good half hour, 45 minutes with this girl, talking to her about Christ. And she was taking it all in. And she was listening unbelievably intently. And I knew the Spirit of God was working powerfully in her life. And I knew, because of our conversation, and Beth was there at the same time, that she was only working till 11 o'clock that night. I said, well, hopefully, we'll see you when we come back from the concert. When we got back in the hotel from the concert, she was still there. And she came out of the back room to the front desk. And she goes, sir, I got to tell you something. I said, okay. Young girl. She goes, you know how there's times in your life when something happens and it changes the whole direction of your life? I said, yeah. She goes, for me, tonight was that night. She said, just with your conversation with me, I know it has changed the entire direction of my life. Concert didn't turn out the way I planned it. Neither did my conversation with that young lady turn out the way I thought it would turn out. It was better than what I ever imagined it would turn out. Didn't stop there. Has anybody ever been to Montour Falls, New York, and see the fall right in town, the enormous waterfall coming down? Have you ever seen it? Anybody? You gotta go. It doesn't matter if it's winter and it's beautiful, it's all frozen or whatever, but in the summertime, it's just gorgeous. Montour Falls. Right at Watkins Glen. Yep, good, thank you. Right near Watkins Glen. Yep. You go to Watkins Glen, make sure you pull off into Montour Falls first. Okay? Well, Beth and I have pulled in. There's only one parking place there right in front of the falls. And so you were right in front of these enormous falls coming down. And there's houses on each side. And it's just a beautiful little town. And we got out and you could park there for 30 minutes, and we got out and walked and looked at the falls and everything, and we come back to the truck, and we were looking at the sign there about the town, and we were reading it, and the next thing you know, on the street pulled this small car, and the young guy driving had his girlfriend in the passenger seat, and he leans over and he says, hey, can you tell us how to get to the top of the falls here so we can, look down and, oh, we don't know, we're not from here. And we started a conversation. Yeah. You know where I turned it? I turned the conversation to Jesus and about them having a personal and intimate relationship with Christ. And Beth and I both said a lot, and they were parked right in the street, and the cars coming down the street, fortunately it's not a busy town, had to go out around them, okay? And he was a little bit concerned. I said, they'll go out around you. I said, this is the country. He was from South Philly. I said, they'll go around you. I said, you're fine, just stay right here. And so we talked to them for, a good 20 minutes. And we said our goodbyes, and they ended up pulling away. And Beth and I had been looking for a place to get a cup of coffee there in the morning, and there was an advertisement right there at the Falls about a place on Main Street that had coffees. And so we went down after we drove through the town a little bit. We come around to the coffee place. Guess who comes walking out of the coffee place? The couple that we were just talking to earlier in the car. And I looked at him and I said, well, that's fancy meeting you guys here. Long time no see. And God did it twice. They said to Beth and I, we know that our conversation with you was all God. Beyond a shadow of a doubt, God orchestrated us meeting right there at the Falls. And it was just like God was speaking right to us through you guys. What the Lord wants is He wants that intimacy with you so that He can take then and use you in the lives of others. It's not for any special spiritual elite. It's for all His children, the least of us. And believe me, I'm one of the least. Just ask my wife. And the incredible thing is, every now and then, like he did, the concert didn't go the way I planned it. And the conversation at the table with the adults that were around us didn't go anywhere. I got to be honest with you. It was like pulling teeth. And you know me, I'm a yacker. Get out. But what he did in the girl's heart there at the hotel, what he did in this couple's heart there at the Falls, both of them letting us know that their lives had been completely altered just in a conversation. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And I sensed that and I understood that, especially the girl behind the counter. When I started the conversation, the way the Lord was moving, I said, this is the whole reason you sent me to Bath, New York. But we've run out of time. There's an other incredible spiritual story of an individual that gets saved right there at Montour Falls. We were hoping he was going to redeem Israel. Let the Lord be the Lord of your life rather than you trying to control Him and what He allows into your life. Trust Him. No matter how much pain, no matter how much sadness, no matter how much suffering, trust him. And I'm telling you, you will not go wrong. Amen? Amen. Closing hymn?
378.
Thank you, Beth. 378. I've been waiting for you, hon. That's why I went so long. 378. You must have been long-winded downstairs. What's that?
Just wait for Jasmine to come down. Tell me when you're done.
Oh, yeah. Blame it on me again. 378. 378. You've only got one life.